This video is sponsored by Aquashine Exteriors, professional jet washing and cleaning services across Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, including Dorset, Hampshire and Wiltshire. Are you feeling it's time to get that driveway nice and shiny for when you come home, or are you wanting to get that guttering tidied up and spotless again? They deliver this, plus much, much more. Please head into the description below where you'll find their details for their website, including the socials, Facebook and Instagram. You also need to find their before and after portfolio. You can also call them on 07503 998 088 for a free quotation. Don't wait till next week. Don't think you'll do it another day. Pick up the phone, give them a call, check them out. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Cherries Red Army. It's the international break, I know, but it's an opportunity for us to talk about that weekend at Newcastle. We probably need an international break if you went to the game. A long way to go, but a great result for us. We'll talk about it tonight, and we're also going to talk about the rest of the season so far. We've got topics that many of the fans have dropped in, and we're going to debate them. And of course, this is your show this evening. Cherries Extra Time, a free-for-all format. If you want to come on, I'm going to stick a link into the chat in about 15 minutes time. Just click the link, allow Cameron and Mike. If you want to come on, have your say on the season so far after 7 games, do come on and let us know your thoughts. But we have got guests on this evening, so we will be debating for the next hour or so. If you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. Cherries Red Army, we've gone past 1,200. That's because of you, the fans, family, friends that you've got that have joined the channel, and we're growing week on week. It's great to see. Also hit the like button. That really does help on Cherries Red Army. Hit the like button. It helps the videos grow. And then Cherries Red Army is more seen on YouTube as well. And of course, if you weren't able to join us live, you can let us know your thoughts in the comments. But that interactive chat is there. I can already see some of you in the interactive chat letting us know you're there. So do let us know, and I'll show thoughts, comments throughout the stream. And tonight, it's Cherries Extra Time. So we'll start with the team to start with. I saw him a few days ago in Newcastle. John, good to see you again. How are you?
Yeah, good to see you too. Lovely to see the intros are getting more and more elaborate every single time. So thank you very much for that, Kirk. Pleasure to be back on again.
Mixing it up. Always mixing it up. Aaron, good to see you as well. We had a good drink before that game in Newcastle. A great atmosphere. Great fans in Newcastle. We're going to talk about that in more detail and the season. Good to see you. It's been good after 7 Premier League games.
Yeah. Hello, lovely people and everyone watching. Yeah, really good to see you guys up there. And yeah, looking forward to debating all things Bournemouth tonight.
Who is joining us this evening then? We've got Mark Singleton, Evening Cherries fans. How are you doing? Aaron's saying hello in the chat. Mark Cole, how are you? We've also got, we'll put him in there, Scott the Bin Man Parker. Not a lot to do nowadays. Dan Chase is also joining us, AFC Bournemouth Germany, and Carol Toller. Great to see you, Carol. She was in Newcastle all last week. She was preparing a week for the game. I actually missed Carol. I walked straight past her, guys, and Owen went to me, "You just passed Carol Toller." I went, "You're joking." So I went back and I got a match prediction from her. So sorry about that, Carol. But I did apologise at the time. I was in my own little world. That's the best place to start, I think, guys, is Newcastle 1, Bournemouth 1. We are always optimistic in our match previews. I did say 1-1 on the match vlog as well. And John, we'll get some images from that game in a moment. A great result in the end. We hung in there. We'll get some stats as well that you'll see. Only 28% possession, but sometimes possession's not everything. You can still get points in the Premier League, and we may have deserved more on another day.
Yes, I also went slightly against my head and went with a more emotional choice of 1-1 for the match prediction there as well, and we fully deserved the point that we got. And yeah, I would agree that we were a little bit unlucky to not get the 3 points. One lapse in concentration defensively, or maybe just not quite following the right directions, led to about an acre of space for Kieran Trippier to put in a cross that got the penalty. I know you have some strong thoughts about that, Kirk. Personally, I can
Come to that in a moment.
I can absolutely see why that was given, and there was no way it wasn't going to be with the current use of VAR and the handball rule in the league. But there were a good number of positives come out from that game, and I think that was sort of the exact kind of performance that we all want to see in games such as those against the better sides away from home. If we had performed like that against City and Liverpool, then maybe Parker would still be in a job. But it's, which obviously we know it was what he said that led him to go instead. But certainly the results didn't help. And it was solid, it was strong, it was resilient, and we, unlike what Parker said, we were able to actually challenge Newcastle. We were able to compete and do it with the squad that got us up from the Championship mostly. So there was a lot of positives to come from that game, and 1 point is the least we deserved, I think.
Let's break the game down a little bit, Aaron. Probably fortunate to go in at 0-0. Kieran Trippier hit the post. Silly free kick given away just outside the box. And then I think Joe Linton hit the post as well after the ball sort of played around after a corner. But we got in there at 0-0. I know that you were behind me in the seat behind me, and you were a little bit concerned that they were getting through our centre backs and through the lines a little bit too easy. But we were defending it well when they eventually got a cross in. But on another day, we might have gone in 2-0 down. But it was good to go in at 0-0. But yeah, you were definitely a little bit worried in the first half at times.
Yeah, I mean that's just my negativity, which seems to, when the game's on, I'm always thinking we're about to concede from every single attack that they have. Look, as you said, they had 72% possession. They clearly had the better of the ball. They were getting into some very good positions. I was very concerned. First half, especially, they were, overloads on either flank. There seems to be a lot of 2-on-1 situations, and it was actually their poor final ball which kind of bailed us out. We did have our moments. I mean, Tav had a header which probably should have got on target. Actually, really, he got the right trajectory on it, but just put it wide, which is a really good opportunity. But other than that, in the first half, we didn't really have that much. But again, for all the kind of possession that they had, there was that crazy 20-second spell when Neto made about 3 great saves, all different types of saves in the space of 25 seconds or so. But other than that, you say Trippy hit the post. I mean, I was behind you saying, well, this is his bread and butter. This is going in, but he got it slightly wrong. But yeah, we came in 0-0, bit your hand off for it. I said before the game, like John, I said a draw for the channel. Did I really believe we're going to get a draw? Not really sure. I think this was a sort of game where, we're going to talk about the season as a whole, but this was certainly an above par point for me.
Interestingly, John, in that second half, we dropped into a back five. Jeff Lerma dropped in there, and we were really deep in that first 10 minutes of that second half, and I was getting seriously concerned. But Marcus Tavernier picked up the ball in our half, and when we talked about just lacking that little bit of pace and we need someone to drive us up the pitch, he did that. He drove us up 50 yards. We then sort of recycled possession. It didn't lead to anything. Ryan Christie got it to Lerma. I think he switched it back out to JC, or was it Lewis Cook? And then he got it to JC, and then the cross came in. And Philip Billing could quite have easily on another day been substituted like he has on many days. But you don't take Philip Billing out your side. And this is the reason why. As frustrating as he can be to watch sometimes, I thought he gave the ball away poorly at times. But he was there when we needed him. That's his second goal of the season, top goal scorer. And we took the lead on a sort of a counter-attack.
Yeah, it was interesting that it was the second half that he actually got that goal there. I kind of wish I paid a bit more attention to him in the first half, because within the first sort of 60 seconds, it was pretty clear we were setting up in a 4-2-3-1 in the first half, and Billing was being given a role to man mark Bruno Guimaraes, who is a player that can definitely dictate a game if you let him. So there was the initial probably idea to help shut him down, but I don't know whether I wasn't paying enough attention to Billing to see whether he stuck that out for 45 minutes. I have a feeling it sort of eased off towards the middle of the first half, and O'Neill decided that maybe I don't want Billing sort of his strengths nullified. And is he necessarily good enough to perform a man marking job for 90 minutes? So we're going to try and sit deeper instead. We'll fit into a 5-4-1. Billing can play one of the two central midfield roles. And Billing's been very impressive defensively with his clearances, his tackles, his interceptions so far this season. And I think he did a really good job there. Tavernier has been fantastic this season with his dribbling, and he's one of the few sources of real pace that we have in counter-attacking. And you're right, the initial ball, eventually, I think it was actually Zamora that tried the initial cross that got sent back, recycled, and back to Zamora again. The only thing makes a run that I think on another day would have been offside. I think it might have been Byrne, but whoever it was that was the left centre back follows him and keeps him on side. And it's a lovely tuck away as well from Billing, just the right touch to put it in the back of the net. Lovely ball in from Jordan Zamora, who I think has been very impressive so far creatively this season, as our one of our top creators from left wing back / left back so far this season, which is great to see, because we know that is his strength, and he's also doing well defensively. I think Billing has had poor moments, but I think he's also been one of our best players this season. Despite that, I think he's done so much for the team, attacking, defending, all over the pitch. And I think weirdly, it's when you tell him to just attack that he actually doesn't do very well. I think it's actually when you give him more of a box-to-box role, when you tell him to be involved everywhere, that he's all action and really gets involved, and is currently our top goal scorer as well. So he's really doing something right.
I'm going to say the thing about Billing is, and I think I said to you, Kirk, and it was the same at Nottingham Forest as well. He can go missing in periods of the games. He can look sloppy. He can look languid, but we're not exactly a team that is blessed with goals from all over the pitch. And obviously Dom is the goal scorer, but Phil Billing is one of the only other players in the team who does get goals regularly, and you can't really take him off for the reasons he scored a cracker at Nottingham Forest. He's in the right position again at Newcastle. And he can be frustrating at times, but he does score goals, and you can't really take players off the pitch who score goals.
Paul Horry's joining us in the stream. He's a Cherries Red Army support member. Thank you, Paul. He says 6 games next month could be a big month. We're going to come back to that later on, because we are going to go on to some topics about the start of the season. We want you to debate with us. We'll get some guests on as well. So more to come. We're going to close off Newcastle within the next 5 minutes, and then talk a lot about the season so far. John, Aaron, Heather was paying attention to Billing.
Sure she was. Of course she was.
Of course she was. Definitely.
And she's very happy with Philip Billing being top goal scorer this season. Can he get to 10 again? Maybe. Right. We can't ignore it, guys. Right. The penalty. Look, I have had a say on Twitter. You might not be on Twitter. Not everyone is on Twitter. I had a bit of a say yesterday. Now, this is not sour grapes, guys. I want to get your thoughts on it. And I'm open for anyone who wants to disagree with me. It's not sour grapes. I love the point. 1-1 draw, fantastic. And I don't think I'd really have an issue with the penalty unless VAR gets involved. Now, the issue I've got, I'll come to you first, John, and I'll see if I can read out what I put on Twitter in a moment. So the issue I have was the on-field decision was not a pen. Okay, that's what we've got to understand first of all. The next part of that was it intentional? I mean, who normally, unless you name Steve Cook, no one generally intends to handball inside the box. So it's very rare that it's going to be an intentional handball. But if you slow down the clips, he's not even looking at the cross. So he doesn't even know where the ball or flight's going, so he's not done it intent. And then the next part of the handball potentially is if he's made his arm unnaturally bigger. Now, the issue I have with that is the arm starts behind the knee and then it's slightly above the knee. I mean, if you look at it as like a degrees, so I'm talking about it being completely horizontal, be 90 degrees. I mean, it's less than 45%. The issue I've got with it is that I think it's up to debate. It's subjective. On that basis, how can you overturn it? Because you can't 100% categorically, in my opinion, and I think that's been fair, because if you go on Twitter, it's very split from what I've seen. If you can't be 100% consistent, that is a handball. That's when it can't be a penalty. And that's the issue I have with it, John. So I'm trying to explain it. I know I'm going a bit into detail, but the issue I have with it, the on-field decision was not a pen. So it has to be 100% every single time a penalty. Where does his arm go, John? Do we glue it to himself, or do we just cut it off full stop?
So, well, I'm going to similarly raise 3 points, but they're not going to be direct counters to each of your 3 points. But I'm going to raise my 3 points just to say why it is a penalty. Firstly, unfortunately, as much as I think VAR should be used, how you're describing it, that's not how VAR is being used. I think the use of VAR needs to be adapted because I think it is too intrusive into games. However, that is not how it's being used at the moment. VAR is basically being used as any decision looks maybe debatable. It's being then basically encouraged to be looked at. And I think that's overusing it at the moment. But in the instance of that handball, it's a totally legitimate use of the way that modern VAR is being, I say modern VAR, the way that technology is being used in the modern game. I'd say, secondly, whilst his position is, I would agree, arguably, and I would certainly say it's a natural position for his body to be in, particularly if you move forward. And I would say that as he turns his body, your left arm, when you're not focusing on keeping it down, it does sort of automatically sort of pivot upwards. So I would say it's natural, but at the same time, his arm comes up to meet the ball is the first point, which is why I would say that when that's being reviewed, if you go back half a second, his arm is behind his leg. But then you scroll on half a second, his arm is there and he's able to hit the ball. So out of the last 2 points, one of those 2 points is firstly his arm is coming up to meet the ball, which is unfortunate because I think it's natural, but that is a mark against him. And the third thing is the fact that his arm actually hits the ball means that it's not in line with his silhouette, which means it does actually make his body bigger, which is in the rules to say that is a reason for giving that call. As much as I believe that would be an incredibly harsh point because I think it is a natural position for your arm to go in, he's technically making his body bigger, which I think those 3 points are all reasons as to why you would give it as a penalty for a handball. And whilst I don't really want those given, I can't blame Trippier for trying to claim that and the referee overturning it. And you look at you ask any sort of pundit professional asking about, no one's talking about that as a debatable decision. As much as it might be one within the Bournemouth fan base, I'm not too hung up on it personally, and I'm a little bit frustrated at the time, but I can look back on it and say that I think it was fair enough that it was given.
So Mark also says, Aaron, did it come off his knee? I mean, I didn't pick that up, but after I put my tweet out, someone did say we haven't considered it might have come off his knee. Heather says, I think they should bring back it's only handball unless it's deliberate. It's difficult because not many people will deliberately handball unless they're trying to make a save off the line in the last minute, like Suarez in the World Cup, whenever it was. So Aaron, your point of view, it's not sour grapes. I'm not trying to be funny here. I'm happy with the point. And like John said there, because he's twisted in his body to try and block it or not block it because he's almost scared to do anything, he's so close. Can you take into consideration how close he is? And his arm is going to move with any movement he makes. And for me, the movement isn't that drastic.
Yeah, look, you can talk about this all night. This is the problem with the VAR, the interpretation of it, the interpretation of the handball rule before you even bring VAR into it. I think you brought up a valid point about the overturning. Is this whole, I hate the phrase, what's it, obvious, clear and obvious. It just drives me mad because that's subjective in its own right. So nothing's clear and obvious apart from offside, which is something factual. If it crosses the goal line, if it's offside, a foul is not clear and obvious sometimes. A handball certainly isn't. No one knows intentions. No one knows what Jefferson Lerma is thinking in his mind in the 0.01% second. He didn't think, oh, Kieran's going to cross the ball in here. Oh, Isaac's behind me. I'm going to pick that. You don't think like that. Your point about as overturning it, we fell foul of the completely opposite at Nottingham Forest, where it was given. He was then advised to potentially have a look because it was a bit harsh, and he then he's stuck with his decision. Whereas this time he didn't give it, was advised, and he overturned it. For me, if you're purely looking at the actual handball the moment it hits his hand, this was more of a penalty for me than Lloyd Kelly's at Nottingham Forest, if I'm being honest, because I keep looking at that Lloyd Kelly one, and I still don't see how that was given as a handball. This one actually looks more obvious, and I agree with John that having seen it, I can't turn around in all honesty and say what an absolute joke, it's a travesty, because it was unnaturally away from his body. You know, the fact we're having a debate about if you twist your body, does your hand come up at a 45-degree angle in behind the silhouette, behind the third degree, you know, in that split second you're thinking of it, it's you know, you're going to drive yourself absolutely crazy. So I don't blame the referee for giving that. I just blame the whole situation around VAR, how it's interpreted, the rules of handball, and it all needs to be clearer, because these is, you know, 1 week that'll be given, 1 week it won't, and that's what's frustrating. So yeah, I mean, look, every single point is valid that you make, Kirk, and the same for Jon. And I think both sides of the argument are totally valid. But and the fact that we're having that discussion, I know you'll say, well, then it's not clear and obvious, but this is where the problem lies. And so, you know, hopefully we'll be on the right side of it in future games. But for me, it's not one where I think it was an absolute travesty of a decision.
Final point on it, because Heather's put something in the chat, and this is my point, guys, and this is what I'm trying to get across to anyone who's calling me a clown on Twitter or whatever you want to say. So I'm going to use this example, Heather. Thank you for the chat. Really appreciate it. So we were talking to Fletch after, and he said no one on their bench was claiming it or asking the ref for it. And he asked, and they said, I think it was. Now, Jon, that's where I have the issue, because it was the on-field decision was not a pen. So if in your mind, and a lot of people have said this, even in the tweet I put out, they went, I think it was. That, how can you overturn an on-field decision on the basis of I think it was? That's where I've got the issue, because it has to be 100% almost across the board that 10 people would go, it's a pen. It's not I think it is, it's 100% a pen. And that's what I'm trying to get across in my tweet.
Okay, I would flip that and say that look at the ref's position and look at the assistant ref's position. You couldn't have called that as a penalty from the ref's position. Unfortunately, they can't be perfect, and we blooming well know that. But from the ref's position and in the initial angle, 21 out of the 22 players on that pitch wasn't claiming for anything, because Kieran Trippier can see that it definitely comes off his arm, but no one else can from the angle, because his arm is very close to being in line with it. It's not directly in line, which is why it's a penalty, but it's close to being in line with his knee. And most of the people in there, pretty much all the fans, assumed it came off his knee and went out. But Kieran Trippier can see that it did. And that's why he's going absolutely back crazy at the ref, saying it's a handball. So I think referees need to be able to look back at things that they don't get the right angle of, and then be able to realize that actually my assistant ref was blocked, because the assistant ref is probably blocked by Trippier. So he can't see that either. I would actually prefer VAR to be implemented in more of a outside of very specifically. So like goal line technology, has it crossed the line on, you know, going out for a corner and goal kick, and offsides. Those are 100% technology can tell you whether it is or it isn't. Everything else is subjective, basically. So at that point, you should implement more of a challenge system, as in they have in American football and tennis, because I reckon no one is interested in that. Trippier is 100% convinced it's a penalty. He goes to Eddie and says, challenge that, because that was a definite handball, at which case the referee can actually be given another look. I think VAR is overused, and maybe you should rely on the players to try and to get something more involved in a challenge type system. But anyway, that's another point, and I think we have probably done this to death at this point.
We have. So let's wrap up. Newcastle 1, Bournemouth 1. It's a great point. It's a good debate, but we do want to get on with the Cherries extra time, which is talking about Bournemouth season so far. I have put a link in the chat. If you want to come on this evening, we're going to be on to potentially 9:15, 9:30, depending on how the conversations go. This is your chance. If you want to come on for 5 minutes, just tell us about a player that's been brilliant. Whatever you want to talk about, we will bring topics to the table and you can get involved. We've already got one guest behind who's coming on very, very soon. So hit the like button, subscribe to Cherries Red Army, and use the chat. There are chats going on at the moment. Also want to tell you about, if you're a monthly member at buymeacoffee.com/Cherries Red Army, or you've donated. We've had a couple of donations recently from Jean. We've had one from Martin. Carl Guy's become a new member. And we will be giving out gifts each month to those who donate or are a monthly member. And this month, guys, we do have giveaways for, let's put the banner down. There we go. we've got an AFC Bournemouth beanie. With the weather turning very soon, that's going to come in very handy. And we've also got a mug and coaster for you to potentially win. So make sure you get involved. Look, guys, I'm not going to put it on my head. I'm not going to mess up my hair. But it's there. We've got the gifts. There's the coaster. The mug's here as well. All right. So if you're currently a member or you've donated in September, you'll go into the pot to win that as well. Right. I reckon we should get our first guest on, guys. Do you reckon we should do that?
Let's go.
I've got some topics that we need to talk about. First guy we're going to get on. If you watch his Twitter today, he's doing some great work with the club. He's a model for the club, for the Superstore. And he looks really tidy, he does. He looks smart. He's a smart guy. It's Morgan Scott. I haven't seen Morgan for a while. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, good, thank you. I haven't done my hair for tonight's show, though, so you have to excuse that. But no, I'm all good. Thank you for having me on.
Well, you're a monthly member. You might win this. So next time, you might be able to pop it on your head if you want to. So everyone say hello to Morgan. Morgan, let's get your thoughts very quickly before we go on to the topics this evening, talking about Bournemouth this season. Newcastle 1, Bournemouth 1. I'm sure you were very happy on Saturday as well.
Yeah, I thought it was it felt like a win. I don't know. I didn't go to the game, but it felt more like a win than a draw. It was a very deserved point. We were very good defensively. I thought we handled all areas of Eddie's Newcastle very, very well. And as you said, Kurt, the handball was half a dozen of the other, maybe. I don't like to see them given, but I'm not going to touch on that too much. I think the one that was frustrating was that one that took 5 minutes the other day at Forest. Without any communication, and fans are just sat there without knowing what's going on. But yeah, in all seriousness, I think the point that O'Neill managed to get from a very good Eddie attacking side is fantastic, and hopefully push on from there.
Bournemouth, so far we are 12th in the Premier League. Games 7, points 8, 6 goals, conceded 19. 2 wins, 2 draws, 3 losses. Top goal scorer, Heathers' main man, Philip Billing. And top assists is currently Lloyd Kelly, who might be out for a long-term injury. We'll have to see on that. We'll actually got that coming up in a moment, guys. We'll keep that on the banner for the moment. So what you've done today, I've had a few emails, a few messages from fellow fans who have asked us to talk about some topics, guys. So let's go through some of them and we'll go around the room. The first one is a key one because who knows who's going to be looking after AFC Bournemouth very soon. Should Gary O'Neill get the manager's job? So we'll debate these topics for about 5 to 10 minutes. Interesting one, John. He's really put his name into the ring, hasn't he? I mean, unbeaten, picked up points, got the team playing with heart alongside Tommy Elphick and Sean Cooper. I think it probably is too soon, but with our current status and how we approach the transfer window, I would leave it as it is for the minute and see if we can get to the World Cup. That's my personal opinion. But the debate at the moment is, should Gary O'Neill get the manager's job?
I'm a similar thought process to you as well there, Kurt, because really until the ownership is decided, whether the club is sold or not, you can't appoint a manager right now. It's if Max doesn't sell, then I think he needs to then create and make his own choice. But if he does, and from the sounds of what had been announced, it's going to happen within probably within this international break, the new guy needs to give the opportunity to get his new man in. Now, what I would hope, obviously, is that he takes some consideration of who is already there, maybe some ideas off Max and the current board members, and still keep Gary O'Neill around. Because I think he has shown that he is a very good coach. And if he was given till the end of the season, I would be delighted with that. However, in the long term, I would agree that maybe this is an opportunity that's come around a bit too quick in his coaching career to necessarily give him what will be an incredibly difficult job. Having said that, I think he has shown that he has certainly got some talent for it, and he is able to get the most out of these players. Being unbeaten in 3 games in the Premier League, regardless, is a really good achievement. So there's definitely something there, but yeah, maybe just not yet. And I certainly would not like to see him leave the club, given what he has done for us so far in a coaching role and as the interim manager.
Heather doesn't think the Wi-Fi is going to be strong enough, but she's joining us in the chat. That's absolutely fine. Also good to see Ben. I don't know if I've seen Ben yet this season. I'm hoping to see him at Dean Court a few times. Caught up with him last season. There should be a link in the chat, Ben, if you want to come on. I know you're always keen to have a good say about Bournemouth. So if you want to come on, you're free and welcome to. If not, do continue in the chat. Morgan, Paul says, give him time as interim manager, see how he goes. He's got lots of experience, but Morgan, there's also reports linking him with the Huddersfield job. So it's a catch-22, is it, for the club?
It's a difficult one. I agree with what yourself and John were saying. I think with O'Neill, he's never done this before. So to do it with the start of the season was very, very difficult. He's come, we're undefeated under him so far. He's done very well. A draw against Eddie Newcastle, a very strong team attackingly, and also a very good Wolves team at times. So that wasn't a bad to get a couple of draws there, and also for his tactical masterclass at Nottingham Forest. No one was expecting that. I was taken off billing at half time, but he didn't. He brought on Frederick, went to a back three with Smudge, and managed to sort it out that way. I think you were saying without a manager, it's hard. Without with Max and etc., if he sells up and stuff, it's hard at the moment to make that decision. Maybe I think what it does do is give it the board. They're not so worried with it. If he just keeps on going one game at a time, and we go to the World Cup, and then they have that period of time to then make their decision. But I wouldn't, as John said as well, I wouldn't want him to go even if he doesn't get the job. I think what he's done has been fantastic. But I think it's a bit too early to tell. So we'll have to wait and see. But I don't think it would be a bad decision if he did get it. But maybe it depends on what happens with Max, etc., and the selling of AFC Bournemouth. So we'll have to wait and see on it.
He's got some great experience, though, Aaron. He played a lot of football for a lot of clubs. He got that experience at Liverpool. And do you know what? It is a bit of a bounce. It was initially. I think, actually, you can't really say it's a continual bounce. I think he did a great job at Newcastle. But we see it time and time again in football, don't we, Aaron, where you get that honeymoon period, then a club goes appoint him, and then suddenly it's not as it was before you gave him the job. I can remember Ole Gunnar Solskjaer doing amazing stuff for Man United, beating PSG in the Champions League, and then they give him a bumper deal, and then suddenly players not playing for him. You see it all the time in football, and that's always the risk that you run. But I think we've got this opportunity to maybe hopefully get through October and then really give us a chance during the World Cup to make a concrete decision, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think remember back to Craig Shakespeare was a real case in point there. He had a brilliant run as interim manager and then couldn't win for Toffee. I think I'd echo all of your points really, and a lot of what's going on in the chat. I think it's working at the moment. I think if we'd have lost to Wolves and lost at Forest or lost at Newcastle, I think the board would probably feel pressured to act quicker, bring in a safe pair of hands, push the boat out a bit. And maybe make a quicker decision. But I think, it just seems to be working for all parties at the moment. The players are obviously playing for him. He's, as you've said, he's an exceptionally qualified coach. He's obviously very good tactically. He seems to be galvanising the players along with obviously Tommy and Sean Cooper as well. And as I said, it is kind of working, and it is a different season to usual. I think the fact that there's a World Cup coming up changes the dynamic somewhat, because we got 8 games really now until the World Cup, 8 or 9 games maximum in the league. And, not too much damage can be done the way things are working. And as John mentioned, obviously the ownership saga is brewing in the background, and that again adds another layer to it. So for me, I wouldn't give him the manager's job now. Not that I don't think he's ultimately capable, but I just think, for all the reasons we've said, it's working at the moment. I think for him, look, it's his job at stake, and I don't know how true that rumor of Huddersfield is, or who knows. But I guess if he does get a secure offer on the table, he'd have to think about it from his professional point of view and his career point of view, because someone could come in and he could be out of the club, which I also would rather he wasn't. I'd love him to stick around in some capacity. So no, for me, it's working at the moment. As long as it's working for him and the results continue in the right vein, then yeah, I think we'll stay with him for now.
James is also in the background at the moment. He's going to come on and tell us how much he loves AFC Bournemouth at the moment. But John, some people have put Sean Dyche in the chat. I mean, he's available. I still think he's going to want a bit of a wedge for the manager's job. There's a question mark against his style, although I've listened to podcasts with Sean Dyche just said, I need to say Sean O'Driscoll then, guys. Sean Dyche, where he said, I'm not rigid to move. I'm not a rigid man. You know, I can play other styles. I just did what I had to do at Burnley for all those years. So he's open to it. But I don't think he completely meets the whole mold that we need, John. But I don't think there is anyone out there. That's the issue I've got. There's no one that ticks all the boxes. They just tick a few. Each one does.
Yeah, Sean O'Dyche would be an interesting one.
Sean
Ironically,
O'Dyche.
would have a higher voice, I'd imagine. But that was a brief point that I was going to make as well. Before we moved on, was the fact that really there's no one out there at the moment. Like in terms of someone that's going to come in and is definitely going to fit the style. The closest one that would have necessarily been closer to what we would want out of a manager that's going to be an attacking style is ironically De Zerbi, who's just gone to Brighton. But I don't think that necessarily would have been a great fit because of his style is very much draw people on, play the ball around the back loads and then counter, and we don't have the pace to counter right now really, and we're also not going to be good enough at the back necessarily to not make about 1,000 errors and make our defensive record even worse. So there isn't really anyone out there at the moment. There really isn't. And in terms of actually getting someone out of a job, good one, Will. In terms of getting someone out of a job, I mean, even managers near the top of the championship, they're probably not going to want to come to a Bournemouth that are still, I have said this every time I think I've been on, are favourites to go down, even if we are 12th at the moment and actually performing quite well. It's not until maybe the turn of the year. If we're still in this mid-table position at the turn of the year and we still haven't employed a manager, which I think would be very unlikely, then maybe we might get quite a few more people that would be willing to come in and buy in. But it's a tough one at the moment. Sean Dyche is basically it. And I think he would do well for us. And I think that you're right. The stylistic issues that people might have with him, I think are relatively unfounded because I think he can definitely do more with a squad than what he showed at Burnley, but very much continue to build around a particular style. We'll see. But it's a tough one at the moment.
Morgan, stay with us. I'm just going to drop your screen to let James in for a couple of minutes, but I will be bringing you back because I want to hear more of your thoughts on AFC Bournemouth. Is that okay, Morgan?
Yeah, no worries at all.
Yeah. Bring you back in 2 minutes. Let's bring James on, AFC Bournemouth fan. How you doing, James?
Yeah.
How are you?
Yeah.
Cherries are doing all right, aren't they?
Yeah.
8 points out of 7 games. You happy?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, who's been your favourite player? Can you tell me? You're going to put it in the chat. Who's been your favourite player this season? He's just going to tell me. Who do you reckon it'll be, guys? Do you reckon it'll be Philip Billin? Or do you reckon it'll be Don Solanke? He's told me. James has told me, right? It's a defender, guys. He thinks he's been brilliant this season, didn't you, James?
Yeah.
He's gone for Chris Mepham.
Good choice.
And John, you love Chris Mepham, so you're going to agree with James, aren't you?
Absolutely. As you'll see with a video that comes out at some point this week, I very much rate Chris Mepham.
Definitely. Aaron, Chris Mepham, he's proven a lot of people wrong, not fully. You know, I think he needs to do it over half a season or even a little bit more than a quarter, and I'll be happy to say that he should be in a starting 11, but he's been up there. One of our best players this season so far, and James is not wrong.
He's been brilliant. I think James made a brilliant decision there because, you know, a lot of people thought he was going to be out the door, you know, for his own sake. He's grabbed that right centre-back slot by the neck, whether it be a 3 or a 2, and he's undroppable at the moment. He's been absolutely fantastic, and long may it continue. Now,
if Bournemouth don't appoint Gary O'Neill, James, there is someone else you would like, isn't there? And you've already told me in the chat. Put it in there again, though. He would like someone to manage Bournemouth if it's not Gary O'Neill. I mean, he's happy with Gary O'Neill. He's enjoying watching the Cherries at the moment. But he would like to see, James, I've got it on there, Sean Dyche.
Yeah.
Just like some of you in the chat, James would like to see Sean Dyche. But, James, it's been great to having you come on. And we'll see you in the rest of the season, won't we? We'll see you again.
Yeah.
But you keep supporting the Cherries. Cheers,
Yeah.
James.
Take care, James. Good to see
Cheers,
you.
James. Good to see you.
And we got Morgan back. Great. That's brilliant from James. He's absolutely spot on. Chris Mepham has been fantastic. Let's catch up where Paul Horry is, and then we'll go on to the next topic. Mark Robbins always does a good job. What's AFC Bournemouth, Joan? Didn't realise Bournemouth had only British managers with the exception of Sean O'Driscoll. That's interesting. Interesting stuff. And with potentially a new takeover, maybe we'll go for a different type of manager in time. Who knows? Morgan, bring you back into the stream now. Let's go with our next topic. Thoughts on potential American takeover of the club? I'm sure you're going to speak highly of Maxim Demin. What a job he's done, taking us into the Premier League, 5 years, back in the Championship, pumped money in again, even though we knew he was looking to maybe offload the club. He supported the manager, the board, got us back into the Premier League. We're going to miss Max, but potentially this new takeover do the training ground, potential expansion of the stadium and beyond.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. I think what Maxim's done, not to sound disrespectful, he's done a great job. But I think in some ways he's done as much as he can. I don't want to sound disrespectful towards him at all, but I think AFC Bournemouth now we're at the stage where we need. We've been in the Premier League before for 5 years. We stayed there, then we've been down to a Championship, and now we're at the time where we need to get a training ground, extend the stadium, and sort out a few other things. So I think it could be a positive move for Bournemouth if this does happen. Not to say the least that the player might get a free trip over to Vegas at the end on the AFCB social media over the last few days. So I'm sure they'll be happy about that. But no, in all seriousness, I think it could be a good move because we do need a new training ground, which will cost a lot of money, and also to either a new stadium or to extend our current stadium at some point. We hold a very low stadium, 11,700 seats, if I'm correct. We need to sort that out. But no, fair play to what Max has done over the year. If he stays, that's brilliant too. But I think this could be good.
Aaron, we were in Newcastle at the weekend, and I popped across to Gateshead. It's only 3 miles down the road. They had 11,800 seater stadium. And as much as I love Dean Court because it's unique, you're on top of the pitch. I mean, how far were we away in St James's Park? But that is what a Vanarama North team. And look, we love the stadium. We love Dean Court. I'm sure we'd all love to stay there, but we do need to potentially do something with it in time. I don't want to go the other way though, Aaron, and have a soulless bowl. Thoughts on potential takeover though? There's always risks, but if promises have been given to Max that they can maybe produce a little bit more than he can, it can be a good thing, can't it?
Yeah, no, of course it can. I mean, it's that old adage, isn't it? Like you live in a flat, you buy a house, you buy a massive house, and you think, oh, this is absolutely huge, and then within a few kind of years, you don't, oh, it's not so big anymore, and you want a bigger house. I never thought we'd be in the position in the Premier League, having been this is our 6th year in the Premier League, where we're actually wanting more, wanting the fact that we got an owner who's been the best owner a football club could possibly ever wish for. And that is still, as Morgan said, no disrespect at all, is still potentially not enough. I mean, it's just ludicrous that we're even saying that. And it's, where do we want to be ultimately? Because what Max gives us is stability. He, as I said, he's been the most unbelievable owner of the football club. But it's a two-way thing. He obviously wants, he's obviously come to the end of potentially where he wants to be. He wants to get his money back. And again, that's admirable that he's not really even asking, from the sounds of it, for anything more than his money back, So he's entitled to that, which is just brilliant from him. So it's a two-way thing. He's probably, wants to make he's had his time, wants to maybe move on to other ventures. And whilst realizing as well that he can't take us to the next level, hasn't got the money potentially for a training ground, to invest in the squad again to keep us in the Premier League, to potentially enhance the stadium. So from that point of view, we are at the stage, as I said, crazily, that AFC Bournemouth looking for more than just a multi-millionaire owner, looking for a multi-billionaire consortium now. So, and of course it comes with risks. As I said, Max has been a stable constant in our lives. We've heard that a lot the last 10 days, haven't we? But but he has been, he really has been, and we feel safe we felt safe with him. He always had the best interests of the club. He was never in it for anything else. And I would like to think that he would have done his due diligence, and if he was to sell to this consortium, that obviously the best interests at heart. But who knows? He can only control so much. But yeah, I mean, lots of questions to be asked. Who's involved? Foley with other people potentially. What are their intentions? What are the ramifications of that? I mean, someone sent me something the other day about, and I'll just read it. Sorry, because I'm not sure if other people have seen it. That Foley's company are major investors in Eagle Football, the firm run by fellow American football Textor, who is a major shareholder in Crystal Palace. And Textor just bought Brazilian club Botafogo and Belgian team Molenbeek. But however, there needs to be a deep dive by the Premier League on the links between Foley and Textor, because apparently under the rules, Textor cannot have an interest in two football clubs in one country. And they already have a significant interest in Crystal Palace. So again, this is part of a due diligence that the Premier League will have to delve into about who's really involved in this consortium, or is it just a link? But I'm sure that will all be taken care of. But assuming it does go ahead, then yeah, potentially really exciting times for us. But the unknown, I guess, to some degree, we haven't got many assets to strip, to be honest with you. So, it could only hopefully be positive. But we'll see.
Due diligence. Mark Davis. Reckon Morgan in his new role could make a few cardigans. Look the part, throw your name into the hat. Doing some great stuff there. Look, even Mark's appreciating the stuff you're doing for AFC Bournemouth Superstore, Morgan.
Nah, thank you very much. Maybe not the cardigans. I think I've seen enough of them to last me a lifetime. But maybe I quite like the polo shirt that Gary O'Neill wear. To be honest with you, I think that's quite smart. And you don't. Sometimes you see a manager in a suit and booted, and that can look great as well. But I quite like the polo from O'Neill. Quite blend, and it fits in with his tracksuit. So no, but
get your
cardigans,
thoughts.
maybe not for now.
Yeah, John, get your thoughts on this potential American takeover of the club then. Will says, I hope we build a stadium similar to Brentford's, but it would just be nice to just own our own stadium. It would. Now, my thoughts, John. Training ground, 100%. Get that nailed. For me, having a category that means that we don't lose players up the road to Southampton. We actually get to players before Southampton that potentially make a profit in 10 years' time for 50 million quid. There is money made in having a training ground, not just for that reason. It's also good for the first team, etc., and other levels of the club. The stadium is a little bit iffy for me. I would love to get more fans through the door. I'm going to be completely honest here. I would love to see more fans through the door. But if you're going to build a new stadium, John, it's got to be worth it. If you're talking about 20 years, if we end up dropping down the leagues, we've got to still make sure that we can fill the capacity, because with a new stadium, with 20,000, there's commitments you've got to make as a club to secure that stadium on match day, staffing. And that's what I think that others have spoken about on Twitter about. It doesn't really pay back unless you know you're going to fill it week in, week out for 20 years.
Yeah, I agree in regards to the stadium on that one, particularly as when we were in the Championship last time in our last season, I'm pretty sure we weren't filling Dean Court on a regular basis. Well, I imagine at times when the football wasn't great, we definitely weren't. But there is definitely attitude for wanting to get more tickets and wanting there to be more. There is enough demand to suit building a bigger stadium when we're in the Premier League. And I think 20,000 maybe is slightly... It's odd, because I would say that 20,000 is probably the minimum enough to sort of make it a bit more worth it. But I would also say that would we necessarily even fill out a 17,000 seater on a regular basis, even in the Prem? I don't know what the additional demand is, but I don't think it's huge to go that far past 12,000. And I mean, a tester, I suppose, would be to be... the initial plans that we actually got planning permission for, I believe, was turning the South Stand into a permanent fixture and filling in the corners, and that would have turned it into 17,000. And I think that's probably...
Was it that much? I thought it was 14.5.
Was it 14?
You're right.
Well, 14.5 would probably still be a good sort of indicator to see, are we even selling out enough on that? The only other thing would be to maybe try and do something else with the stadium. If we were going to build a stadium from scratch, would be trying to do something else to try and, or a maximum maximize revenue generation to be able to fit other things rather than just football, to try and get more events there, perhaps. Because that's the only other way that you're going to make a new stadium worthwhile. Obviously, we're not going to do something like Tottenham Hotspur's done and make an entirely separate pitch appear from underneath the ground. But I do think I would like to see a slight expansion on the stadium. The more important thing for me by far is getting the training ground done. And from the sounds of things, what we're currently doing is not going to be to the same extent as to what was initially planned when we were in the Premier League before, which kind of, I feel as though maybe a new investor might be able to then go, okay, no, so it was initially a £50,000 project, £50,000 project, or not 50,000, 500,000, or whatever it would be. 50 million. There you go. Not 50,000, 50 million. Whatever it is.
All right, build it now.
It's initially so much. We're now going to spend 3/5 of that. New owner comes in and goes, no. I want this bigger. Let's treble that, or whatever. We need that stadium to be state of the art, because that's something that will help the entire club for 2 to 3 decades, depending on how state of the art we make it. So that's getting the most out of that is the most important thing. But then, if we are going to make another stadium, it needs to be able to be profit generating. So even if that takes 20 years to eventually turn it, as long as we are generally making more money off it, that's important. But I think what hopefully might be done is that a big owner comes around with his wad of $10 million bills and slaps Structure Dean across the face and says, here's the money, give us our stadium back, which I think we would all love. And then fill in the corners, make it a 14,500, and that's probably going to do us for a while, until we are very solid in the Premier League. Doing major work on the stadium isn't necessarily going to be worth it. If someone's got a lot of money to lose, like this guy probably does, then be my guest. But as long as it goes on his dime, not on ours.
More risks involved with the stadium. We would all love more fans coming through the gates. Less risk on the training ground and potential more profits down the road. Next topic, though, Morgan. Let's talk about players, shall we? I know you really enjoy talking about AFC Bournemouth players. Should we be worried about Mark Travers, considering Neto's recent performances, and his last match was against Liverpool, where he conceded 9 goals? I was gutted to see Mark Travers whipped out against Wolves. Park was sacked. Gary O'Neill came in. Felt like Mark Travers needed to get back on the pitch and get playing again and get it out of his system. He's not been able to. In Neto's defence, he's been steady and he's done nothing wrong.
Yeah, I think it was sensible from O'Neill to take Mark Travers out for the game against Wolves. The only thing, Neto's been phenomenal, and I don't want to criticise him too much after the fantastic saves, 3 massive saves in the game, maybe 4 at Newcastle. The only thing I would like to mention, Kirk, is towards the end of the game at Forest, he punched the ball, and in Morgan Gibbs-White, for 43 million quid, should be putting that ball in the back of the net. And it wasn't a convincing punch. He also, in the game against Wolves at Dean Court, for the first maybe 25 minutes or so, looked a little bit shaky for my liking. And now as a goalkeeper, you need to be quite confident. Now, I think the reason that he's been brought in is because he's maybe a lot more vocal than Travers to help the back 4 out. And that's why, obviously, the game against Newcastle, he was fantastic and he hasn't conceded a lot of goals. Obviously, maybe, 2 since he's come in. But I think the finish with, 3 with the one at Newcastle, but that was a penalty. So I think the finish with Neto is he does have the experience, so maybe that's more better vocally, but it would be interesting to see if he does make any more punches, any more mistakes with the punches, if Travers does get another opportunity. But Travers is still young, so I'm sure he will bounce back when he is given the jersey back at whatever point that may be.
Yeah, Aaron, they seem very different goalkeepers. Mark Travers, fantastic last season. He got Golden Glove, 20 clean sheets. I mean, I think any fan would probably have kicked off if Mark Travers was whipped out the team. But Neto's come in, he's done a professional job. He probably knew that he would probably get a bit of slack from fans for coming in, but it's not his fault. The man just picked him. But Neto, I mean, he's a very good shot stopper. He's a goalie. You'd hope to think he would be. He's probably better with his feet. But there were concerns with Neto about him being quite erratic and he wasn't really a goalkeeper for catching. And I think we very much saw that against Wolves. But I didn't feel like I was worried about him on Saturday against Newcastle. I felt very comfortable having him in goal. And like Morgan said against Forest, maybe it would have been 3-3 if a £42 million striker could finish his dinner. But Neto has kept Mark Travers out the side.
Yeah, I mean, there were a few eyebrows raised before the Wolves game. Interestingly enough, it wasn't Scott Parker who obviously took him out. It was the Gary O'Neill, the boot room boys, Sean Cooper, Tommy Elphick, who probably felt that he just needed to take him out of the firing line after that. He's still a young goalkeeper, and conceding 9 goals can affect anyone. So it wasn't necessarily whipped out because that was his fault by any stretch. But Neto obviously came in, to the club, we thought very much as an experienced backup. Hadn't played much football in the last 3 years, but has obviously got a hell of a lot of experience. And he did very well against Wolves. Not a huge amount to do, but he was quick off his line to deny Jimenez when he was through. Morgan's obviously mentioned the one kind of blemish at Nottingham Forest, which almost cost us. But I thought it was superb at Newcastle, really superb. Obviously, the penalty had no chance. It was a brilliant penalty. He made, as I said earlier in the programme, some great saves in that sort of 10-15-second spell. And then towards the end of the game, when they were lumping up the ball to the likes of Wood, and they put their tall men up there, he was coming and claiming everything and looked really confident in doing so. And I felt confident in him. And he was very, very vocal. One thing I noticed from the Wolves game, because obviously behind his goal in the North Stand, he was very, very vocal, screaming and shouting and directing. Obviously at Newcastle, we couldn't see him, let alone hear him. He was so high up. But he certainly is very, very vocal. Not that Mark Travers wasn't. But yeah, he's got experience. And as you said, he does, I say 9 times out of 10, have great distribution as well. Really, a brilliant pass on him. So, and the 3 results, you can't sniff at those 3 results that we've had with him in the team. So he's obviously going to stay in the team for some time. The question, should we worry about Mark Travers? I don't think we should worry about him. He was so good last season as he pretty much swept the board with all the awards. You kind of think, don't want him to be seen as the fall guy for what was a terrible result and a poor couple of runs of games, because everyone else has had the opportunity to make up for it, and they really have done. So that's it. My only thinking is, I wonder how he's thinking inside, but I'm sure that they're dealing with it. A lot of as I said, they've been involved in the club for a long time, the likes of Fletch as well, are obviously talking him through it and hopefully saying, this isn't anything that you've done wrong, but this is just the right thing, and it's proven probably to be the right thing now. But I guess we'd never have known if he had stayed in the team.
From an asset point of view, John, he's on a long-term contract. He signed a new contract in pre-season. Right, let's look at this now, John. Right, let's go back a few years. Mark Travers had a freak performance against Tottenham. Absolutely fantastic. I think it was against Crystal Palace he struggled. Then we didn't really see him again. Then he came in that first championship season, had a bad day at the office versus Blackburn. Begovic took the spot. We didn't see Travers again. Had a fantastic season, as we talked about in the championship. He had a good start to this season, clean sheet against Aston Villa. He's come up against 3 top teams in the Premier League, and the last one 9-0. And the concern I have, I agree with everything Morgan, Aaron, and anyone saying in the chat. Neto's done nothing wrong. I worry though, John, that the last game Mark Travers played was 9-0 against Liverpool.
Yeah, but it won't be too much longer before he plays against Everton in the Cup. So he will be able to sort of put himself back out there. And I think Travers has been quite clearly earmarked by the club as a long-term fantastic goalkeeper. You don't get considering at the end of that Premier League season when he got those 2 games, we still had Begovic and Boric. Did we still have Begovic? Did we already brought in Begovic? We definitely had Boric, and we certainly would have had at least one other goalkeeper ahead of Travers in the pecking order. But he was picked out because we were safe and you wanted to give him some game time. He obviously performs incredibly well against Tottenham. Then against Palace, the team weren't great in that game and we conceded 5. Then against Blackburn, I don't think he actually was earmarked to start that game. I believe Begovic was meant to have the whole season, but Begovic had a minor injury that prevented him from starting that game. So Travers would have lost that unless he performed incredibly. Travers would have lost that shirt anyway. So we're now at the point where he is good enough to be a challenging for the number one shirt, but unfortunately, unlike most positions on the pitch, there is only one goalkeeper that can ever play at one time. And I'd say the good thing for Travers is that he has Neto. If we brought in one of the other couple of goalkeepers that we were maybe looking at, they'd have no chance of challenging Travers for the shirt. Whereas Neto is genuine class in that position. Like, he is, ex-Barcelona, ex-Juventus, Sevilla, Valencia was the other one as well of note, and was it Napoli? Another team in Italy anyway.
You're just throwing them all out now.
Well, I mean, come on, when you've got that kind of CV, I think when you go to a team that's at the bottom of the Premier League, you'd be expecting to start. And Neto has shown why he deserves to start. So I think Travers is going to get a lot of experience working with Neto, and Neto is going to know that if he messes up, Travers will jump in his grave. So it's I think having two very, very quality keepers is a really, really good thing for this squad. It isn't great for Travers short term, but the other thing I think you have to consider is that Neto's on a 1-year deal. Neto is going to be looking at this as a club that I'm sure he'll enjoy spending a year at, but I don't think he sees himself spending more than a year at this club. Because if he performs now, he can run off and get a bumper deal at a bigger club. So Travers immediately jumps back in again. So I think we're in a pretty good spot at the moment in terms of our goalkeepers. Travers, when he gets his chance, I'm sure he'll take it. As I say when, it's a matter of if. But I mean, Travers, I'm sure will be disappointed to not be there anymore. But I think we're in a good situation at the moment.
Yeah, there is one. I was going to say there is one thing that Mark Travers really does have ahead of Neto, and that's the song. And I'm really missing singing it because it's a hell of a song, rather than the Neto. But yeah.
Do you know they actually played his song before the game against Wolves when he was whipped out the team for Neto, and I was just like, I mean, that's just like a double hit for Travers, not starting and his songs playing in the stadium. Ben has also said, good point, John. Less shame in losing your shirt to Neto than Alex Smithies. Although, Ben, I did have this in one of our pre-season predictions that we could have got Alex Smithies as a goalkeeper, but I take your point.
He's third choice at Leicester now, so,
Fair enough. Got a couple more questions and topics to discuss, guys. And there's a big one coming in a moment. How many points do we take from October? So we'll want to get your thoughts in the chat in a moment about that. Morgan, can we cope long-term without Lloyd Kelly? Big player for us. He's been fantastic. I think he's taken to the captaincy a lot better at the back end of last season and this season. And you'd probably say you'd be concerned without Lloyd Kelly, especially if it's a long-term injury. I know I was concerned on Saturday, Morgan, when he wasn't on that team lineup. However, we should be encouraged by Mr. Senesi's improved performance at Newcastle, and maybe that's why they purchased him for 15 million quid.
Yeah, I think when the lineups came out, I was like everyone else, surprised for him and Fredericks, if I'm honest. And then you got to think he's our skipper. He's a crucial part of our defence. You don't want to muck around a defence, especially after the start of the season we had. So I think we're going to have to cope without him. But I think it's going to be difficult with Mepham, Ash James and Aaron and you and John have alluded to. He had a great start to the season, so I'm happy with Mets there. The only other option that we have got, if Senesi isn't up to being fantastic, then we got the option to drop Lerma back, which I don't personally like at times because I think Lerma needed in the midfield. But when he slotted in at the third centre half in the second, when we were under the pressure in the first, 10, 15 minutes at Newcastle, well, I think Lerma did a very, very good job there. Okay, he gave the penalty away. That's half a dozen, whatever people opinion split on the penalty are. But I think it's going to be difficult. Senesi did step up against Newcastle. I think there's a lot more to come from him. At this level, you can't just have one great game and then, go and have 4 or 5 games where you don't turn up and then carry on expecting to be in the starting 11. But as I alluded to earlier, Lerma could drop back if we need him to. So it is a bit of a concern. Do we know what the injury is, Kirk?
Not sure. I think it's going to be announced soon, but what I'm reading, it's potentially a nasty injury and a long-term injury. Aaron, Mark says, I think Jack Stephens will be given a chance, and any team without Lloyd Kelly, especially if you're Bournemouth, will probably miss him. It does give an opportunity, like Morgan says, for Senesi. Mepham's performed well, and he needs to play regularly because that's been his downfall for AFC Bournemouth, that he never really gets a full run at it. But with October coming and lots of games, another injury, and then we are sort of in a bit of a sticky point, aren't we?
Well, that's it. Centre back has been much highlighted this season. We've spoken about it a lot. The club's obviously said, spoken about it. We didn't get Nat Phillips back, and we were short at the back. Essentially, we obviously brought Senesi in, but Lloyd Kelly is key to us. We saw that when he didn't play against Liverpool, and we saw it at times last season. He is the pace in the back line, certainly the centre backs, that we so badly need in the Premier League. Need that powers of recovery, and he's been excellent this season. So it's a huge loss. Obviously, we have players who can come in. Senesi did really well against Newcastle. Hopefully, he's going to grow into the league and do well. But it's a different sort of player to Lloyd Kelly. We bought Jack Stephens, clearly with Premier League experience, more as a backup. But again, as I said, he's got well over 100 games, 150 Premier League appearances to his name. So he's obviously used to that league, and Chris Mepham is certainly, I wouldn't say he's performing above, better above his level, but he's because that's doing him a disservice. He's performing really well. And then obviously there's James Hill. So not ideal, but again, I think it's certainly not ideal for the next 6 to 8 games. But whether a 3-month injury is 6 weeks into the World Cup, so. A 3-month injury, whether it's 6 weeks or 3 months, he's going to miss the same amount of games. So not as bad as it would be in a normal season. Hopefully we're back after the World Cup. But I think he's having a scan today from what I've heard. So the rumours, there's been lots of rumours and speculation about whether it's ankle or knee, and he's out for this long or that long. I think no one knows because the scan is today.
Frustrating for the player, John. Progressing as a player, we're starting to see the player that Eddie Howe purchased originally was slotted in at left back, even at Bristol City, I think. But he made it quite clear last season he wanted to be a centre-back. And it's a shame for him as it is for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's made only one real mistake of note that I can think of, which Neto kind of bailed him out with, along with Jimenez just not putting away on one-on-one, which saved his blushes. But other than that, okay, yeah, maybe the odd pass, but he's done that since he joined us, and no defender is going to get 100% pass rate if they're actually trying to pass it forward. So yeah, it is certainly a shame to lose him, but we do have an able deputy. I think I've mentioned this before, that Senesi, maybe it's an element of culture shock, and it's just generally a different league as well. The fact that the Premier League, as much as I think the idea that it's the greatest league in the world, or it's the toughest league in the world, or it's the fastest league in the world, or whatever, it sometimes it's overdone. And actually, the in terms of pace, in terms of more like a basketball game, the Dutch league is the fastest league in the world. But you're going to come up with much better strikers in the Premier League, and Jesus showed him up within 9 minutes against Arsenal. But that's going to just be something like he understands with that mistake, and then doesn't do that again. Maybe in the Dutch league he sort of like they just nudge against each other when going for a header like that. But Jesus ain't gonna take that. So he will develop. He'll need to develop physically. He's not the fastest, so he has to sort of be a little bit more clever. And you did see, in terms of the chance that led to the penalty for Newcastle, there was a breakdown in communication, and Zamora and Senesi both charged out to deal with the striker that dropped deep, and left about 500 acres of space for Trippier to receive the ball in. So there's a little bit more understanding that needs to be generated between Senesi and the defenders near him. He is learning the game in this league. He is going to be coached. I'm I'm fully expecting him to show that he is easily capable to play at our level. And I'm glad that he's going to get that chance, because if Kelly had stayed fit, Senesi would have been on the bench the whole season. And just showed up in the odd cup game, because as Kirk has said, there's it just wouldn't be right if he played on the right hand side for us to have two left-footed centre backs. So
you brought it up, not me. I wasn't gonna say a thing. You brought it up.
So I'm pleased. I'm pleased to see Senesi get some game time, and I think he will. Him and Mepham, fingers crossed, will be developing a good partnership, and we may see Kelly end up sort of having to stay on the bench for a bit after the World Cup.
We will see. Happy to see Senesi have a good game at Newcastle. Right, you've been very active in the chat this evening, which is good to see. You've been talking about the club, talking about stadiums, players, and last topic, we're going to want you to get involved in the chat. And guys, you're going to need your calculators in a minute, because I'm going to want to ask you how many points you think we need in October. I will show you the fixtures on the screen in a moment, though. Subscribe to Cherries Red Army. Hit the like button. Please do hit the like button on this video. If anyone wants to give us a like count already, please do. But do hit the like button. Also want a big shout out for our monthly members. Morgan's on there because he's a monthly member. Fantastic. Thank you to all our monthly members who contribute towards the channel, and anyone who donates. You can become a member at buymeacoffee.com/Cherries Red Army. So, how many points do you think we will get from October? That was a question that was given to me this morning. 6 games in October, guys. What I'm going to do, if I take that off a moment, should we see what games we've got? Let's confirm those fixtures, because that will also help, So you've got Bournemouth, Brentford after the international break on Saturday, the 1st of October. Fulham away. West Ham on Monday night away. Bournemouth, Leicester. Bournemouth, Southampton. And Bournemouth, Tottenham. Lots of home games. 2 away games. Morgan, 18 points up for grabs. What do we need? 8 points on the board at the moment. I think about 37, 38 is a good number in the Premier League. So how many do you want in October?
Did you say 18 in total?
18 possibly we could get from October out of those 6 games.
I think you're looking ideally the Spurs game are very good at Antonio Conte's side. I think you're looking at probably half at least. So you're looking at half of 18, which at this time of night, my maths isn't very good.
9.
So
9.
9. Thank you. At this time of night, I don't know how I can't work that out, but 9. So I think Leicester looking at standout games. I think that game against Leicester 2 weeks after the international break, I think that's a fantastic opportunity. I'm not sure what's going to happen with the Leicester City manager, Roger. They might find themselves without a manager like ourselves, but I think they're not in great form. Brentford the other day, I haven't seen them play that poorly for quite a while. So I think there are definitely games that we can get points. Maybe a point at Fulham, point at Southampton, and then maybe a losing there as well somewhere. I'm not sure. Maybe West Ham or something. I'm not sure our record there. But no, I think if we can come away with 9 out of the 18, I think that'd be a fantastic return. Because, you've got to be positive, but then at the same time, you've got to be realistic.
Morgan, I think you're speaking sense, because you've got a few people agreeing with you in the chat. Wing has said 9 points. Will, 9 points. Mark says, yeah, Morgan, 9 points. What else have we got in there? Chris wants 12. Mark Davies thinks good chance to get 9 from Leicester, West Ham, and the Scum. We've got AFCB Fan TV. I think that's James with 10 points. AFC Bournemouth Germany's 8. Aaron, Mark Cole's 9. Look, positive times. There are winnable football matches in there. Can this bounce? This very good team that Gary O'Neill and Tommy Elphick and Sean Cooper are getting on the field. We got a chance, haven't we? I mean, how many do you want out of 18 in October? And you're on mute.
We got a great record. Take away those 3 games against the Big Six, and the other we are averaging 2 points a game, which is absolutely brilliant. And that will keep us up this season for sure. we can lose 9-0 as many times as we want to the likes of Man City and Liverpool if we're picking up points in all the other games. And as I said earlier in the show, I think that Newcastle game was a bonus point to some degree. If we can go somewhere like Newcastle and get a point, they were missing a couple of players, but so were we. Then, that gives us confidence to go anywhere really, other than, I guess, who we haven't played yet, the likes of probably Spurs and Arsenal, I would say, and be confident of getting something anywhere. I would say, for me, if I could bite your hand off now, I'll take 8 points in those 6 games. You take 2 wins, 2 draws, 2 defeats, and I think that keeps us above par because 38 games in the season. If you get to 38, 39 points, you're going to stay up. We're already kind of 8 points from 7 games, so we are above that level. And then if we get 8 points from the next 6, we're well above that. The only thing is there are, other than the Spurs game, people would say a kind set of fixtures. No easy fixtures in the Premier League. We know that. West Ham away. Look at West Ham are now. That's going to be a very difficult game. They probably would have either turned the corner by then, or even if they haven't, that's a very, very difficult game. Going to West Ham, very tough. Fulham away. We can match them, but they're playing really well. Brentford aren't an easy team. That they are. Everyone thought they might have second season syndrome, but they've been great. Leicester at home, again, on paper at the moment, they've lost 6 out of 7. They're the whipping boys. But again, who knows? They've still got some great players. So I don't think it's as easy as saying we're going to get 9, 10, 12 points. I think realistically, if we can get 8, I would be delighted with that. Some people, I think that's a bit negative, but no, 2 wins, 2 draws, 2 defeats all day long. I'll take that because it could be a lot worse. So for me, I'm not going to say which games are going to come in, but I think we're more than capable of getting 8 points from those 6 games.
Our current run rate, John, we could be already safe before Goodison Park and just enjoy the final day of the season. But when we come back to Leicester and Brentford, I know Brentford lost heavily, but when you look at Brentford and Leicester, fans might think we should get something from those games. Who knows who's going to be in charge, like Morgan says, against Leicester. We're going to have to earn it, of course we are, but it's not a conclusion that we're just going to pick up points in those games. You could quite easily see us drop points and think, oh, now we've got to go and get something against Spurs.
Yeah, I like to often turn to a Twitter profile I quite enjoy called The Other 14, which has a very sensible way of looking at teams outside the top 6 and how they need to go about survival. If anyone else has ever been on there, they've got a really good good way of measuring how a team is doing. And basically, if you're a side outside the top 6 and all you're looking to do is survival, the best way to do that is win all your home games against the other 13 sides, because that would get you 39 points, and that is going to give you a 99% chance of survival. So if you win all your home games, it doesn't really matter what you do away from home or even at home against the top 6. And really, those are the games you should always be going, right, that we must aim for 3 points. So at the moment, we're slightly above where we would expect to be, because we've got a win away from Nottingham Forest and we picked up a draw against Newcastle whilst underperforming against Wolves by drawing. So at the moment, we're a couple of points ahead of where we would hope to be to guarantee our survival. But if you take that profile forward, if you take that analogy forward and look at the current games that we've got coming up in the next month, you need to be looking at Brentford at home, you need to be looking at Leicester at home, and you need to be looking at Southampton at home and saying those are the 3 games out of the 6 we really should be prioritizing getting wins from. And if we do, we stay on schedule. However, away at Fulham, it's not like we couldn't get a point from that game. We did last season. We definitely could do it again. West Ham aren't looking all that great at the moment. And the way that we played against Newcastle is a way I would imagine that if we played that West Ham game next week, which obviously we don't, it's another, 30 days or whatever, it would be a very similar game to the one we played against Newcastle, I reckon. At home to Tottenham, that's a lot more tough, but we can see what we do. A realistic aim is 9 points, but if it was 7 or 8, that's not the worst thing in the world by any means. And I reckon if you could get 10, which I think would be a realistic option, that's 2 wins and 4 draws if we stay unbeaten, or 3 wins and a draw or 2 losses. We're showing that we really are not to be taken lightly. I think a lot of fans just have kind of ignored the job that Bournemouth are doing. They've seen the 9-0 outside of Bournemouth, obviously. A lot of fans have seen, they lost 9-0, they'll be down. Might as well, or as that idiot Mark Goldbridge said, might as well relegate them now and save us the hassle. We're doing a good job, and if we stay steady, we stay achieving the kind of points that we would expect to get. Or at least have a realistic chance of getting, then we're well on course for having a successful season. But it is Brentford at home, Leicester at home, Southampton at home. Those are three of the best fixtures we're going to get all season. As much as it's not easy to just turn up and get those results, they're ones we have to be aiming to try and get 3 points from. And if we don't, then our expectations are going to change a bit.
Wing, we are sure to counter-attack in every game, but at home with the home crowd, we can really maximise our points. I think we win 2, draw 3 in October. And thank you, Wing, for the lovely comment on the matchday vlog of Newcastle. And anyone who comments on our videos, really do appreciate it. We will try and bring you some more content on the channel during the international break. Definitely got a video coming to you very, very soon. So make sure you hit the notification bell. We are going to wrap up this stream, though, very, very soon. It's been great. Cherries Extra Time is a fans content video where we talk about the Cherries, different parts of the season, and we get fans like Morgan and anyone else and James who want to come on. Morgan, please summarise the season so far, how you're feeling, and maybe you're looking forward to Premier League football coming back again very soon.
Yeah, no, firstly, thanks for having me on. I think it's a bit of a roller coaster, shall we say. It started off very well against the opening win against Villa. I don't know about you guys, but I wasn't expecting against a good Villa team. So that's going to really help. That's 3 massive points. Then obviously we had the likes of City and Liverpool and Arsenal. Yes, we were outplayed. They're quality teams. That's not going to define our season. We only have to play them once more. We'll forget about that until that happens. And now we got the ethos back in our football club. You know, what was said. I'm not going to talk about Parker for hours on end, but Gary O'Neill's team and Tommy Elphick and Sean Cooper brought the group of players back together. I like what Gary O'Neill says in the press. He doesn't get too carried away. He's a bit like Jonathan Woodgate in that respect, one step at a time. If he could finish an interview without the cherries, well, he's got a very good shot, hasn't he? But no, just to finish, I think Gary O'Neill speaks very well. They all seem to play for him. He seems to be a likeable character in the dressing room. He seems to be tactically great at times, what he did at Forest, to manage that. And they seem to be believing in what he seems to be getting in, and as well as Sean Cooper and Tommy Elphick and Fletch as well. So, no, it seems a great time. And, it's going to be a bit of a weird... it's a shame that this international break's kind of got to come at a time, but it happens in football. And, when we get back to Dean Court for the 2 home games against Leicester and Brentford, hopefully we'll get Dean Court rocking again.
Brilliantly said. Ben's also said, cheers, gents. We'll join you in soon. Just need to sort out the office camera-wise. We want you on at some point, Ben. We want anyone to come on to these Cherries Extra Time content videos, live streams, because it's all about you, the fans, talking about the Cherries. Aaron, I'll be seeing you soon. Getting off Fulham tickets tomorrow?
Yeah, I will be. Yeah. Hopefully, we'll get it all together.
Happy with your season so far? Summarise: 8 points, 7 games, and still in the cup.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, without being overly negative, I honestly was kind of probably thinking realistically after 7 games, we might have about 5 points. The 3 games we lost, I think we all thought we'd lose them. I thought I would have been happy with a draw first day of the season to Villa on the basis that we were going to lose the next 3. Possibly beating Wolves, so we're par there. And away from home, as John said, if you pick up points away from home, that's great. I thought maybe a point at Nottingham Forest, and I expect us to lose at Newcastle. So, we've got an extra, really 3 points, I'd say, probably on top of where I thought we'd be. So for me, it's been a great start to the season. 8 points from 7 games of the fixtures we've had. I think it's been an overperformance, but we've got to carry it on. And I think the next run of games, as we've alluded to, is going to be huge to pick up, to stay on track and keep the ball rolling over. Keep picking up points. We're going to lose games. It's the Premier League. We're going to lose games, and some will lose heavily. But if we can keep picking up points, chipping away, wins here, draws there, then you know what, we really could be all right here.
Thank you, John. Great to see you at the weekend. Let's catch up again on an away day. I know Aaron's told me he wants to give you another pool game, so that is due very soon. And maybe a tier list from us very soon.
Maybe, yes. Look at the squads as we have it now, and how we feel that they are doing. Are they being steady eddies, or maybe underperforming a bit, or showing genuine class? You'll have to wait for that video to come out later in the week. But yes, thanks for inviting me on again, Kirk. It was a nice, even if brief, to catch up with you at Newcastle. But that's the last away game I'll be getting to for a little while. But I am popping back down to Bournemouth for the first time in a while towards the end of October. So I'm going to hopefully be at the Tottenham game. So it'll be nice to meet a bunch of you in the bar beforehand, have a chat, and meet some faces, put some faces to names, just have a pleasant time. But hopefully we're still doing just as well with the Cherries, and very much ahead of schedule, as I was saying before, and looking forward to more to come after this dreaded international break finally ends. It's not even started, but when it ends.
Drinks are on John as well. I'm sure I heard that in the comment you just made. Brilliant. Thanks, Morgan. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, John. Thank you to you, the fans. Make sure you hit that like button. Keep subscribing. We've gone past 1,200. And if you watch this back, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I know it's a bit of a long video, but it's talking about the Cherries. So I hope you stay to the end and do let us know your thoughts in the comments. So stay tuned. Make sure you hit the notification bell. More videos to come. And when the Premier League football is returning, we'll be back with previews and match day vlogs and match reactions. From this evening, though, until the next one, from me, John, Morgan, and Aaron, and James, we'll see you on the next one. Up the Cherries.
Cherries.